How we doing, guys? True Crime King back again. Today I'm doing a video on Cain Velasquez and what we know up to this point. He's out of jail right now. He was granted bail. So let's get into it.
Velasquez was arrested on February 28th and charged with attempted murder of Harry Goularty Jr. He spent the next 8 months in jail and suffered multiple denials of bail.
Now, Harry Goularty Jr. is a sex offender and a pedophile who molested, I think, Cain Velasquez's, I believe, cousin. We're going to find out in a second. While she was at daycare.
Thankfully for him, the former heavyweight champion of the UFC was freed on a $1 million bail, but it had some conditions like getting treatment and staying 300 yards away from Harry, Patricia, and Paul Bender. But that's not all. Here's everything we know. First up, what happened? In February, Velasquez crashed his Ford F-250 into the side of a Silverado with Harry Goularty Jr. and his stepfather inside during a high-speed chase through San Jose, as if it were right out of an action movie. Fast forward, and Velasquez shot at the car multiple times with a handgun, and some of the bullets eventually caught Goularty's stepfather, and he got multiple injuries.
Now, I would have done probably the same thing if somebody would have done something like that to my kid.
As to why all that happened in the first place, the police explained that while Harry was working at a daycare center managed by his mother, he made repeated unlawful physical contact with Velasquez's child. To make matters
it was his actual child. Not his cousin, so I was wrong.
Worse, the facility and Goularty's residence were in the same building too. The Santa Clara County Superior Court heard the defendant's plea on February 25th. According to the DA's office, Goularty was prepared to pick up an electronic monitoring bracelet, as advised by them, on the day of the shooting. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Goularty did something like this either. On top of that,
yeah, because he's a piece of shit clown.
The child even said that Goularty told him not to tell anyone. This definitely wasn't the perp's first rodeo. So how bad was it exactly?
And talk about the worst person to do that to. It's fucking Cain Velasquez, dude. From the UFC. He would fucking rip that dude's head off.
Following up, how much of a file is he? Goularty, his company Certified Custom Concrete, his mother Patricia Goularty, and her company Patty's Childcare, and his
Patty's Childcare, I bet you that doesn't exist anymore. I hope none of them kids got molested by that creep.
His stepfather, Paul Bender, are all accused of sexually assaulting a youngster, according to a complaint obtained by MMA Junkie, despite sharing initials with Velasquez's 4-year-old son, whom Velasquez's criminal defense lawyer, Mark Garagos, described as the alleged victim.
Mark Garagos. He represents someone else famous. Who the fuck was it? I'll think of it.
In the criminal case, the plaintiffs mentioned on the petition remain nameless. The defendants are charged with failing to properly supervise and care for the alleged victim, according to the 13-page indictment. It further claims that Goularty molested the claimed victim, accusing him of stripping the boy off, touching his privates, and exposing himself to the child many times between 2021 and 2022. Patricia Goularty, Bender, and Patty's Childcare staff apparently let this happen and failed to properly monitor and supervise the victim and Harry, according to the lawsuit. Up next, Goularty's past offenses. Since
this has gotta be good.
2018, the childcare has received 10 infractions, none of which were sexual in nature, though.
10 babies, that's 10 stomachs to feed. We've got to get moving.
The daycare received 2 written warnings in 2018 for being out of ratio or not having enough supervisors for the number of children enrolled. According to the first account of a violation, LPA noticed a licensee and 2 assistants working in the backyard planning something. All the while, there was no adult supervision over any of the kids at that time. Let's talk about Velasquez's failed bail attempts. Velasquez entered a not guilty plea in August.
Remember, this happened in California, so no wonder it took him so long to fucking get out of jail, because he's in California.
Was refused bail in March by Judge Shalina Brown due to his reckless disregard for human life, but was later granted release by Judge Arthur Bocanegra at the end of a pretrial hearing. Bocanegra found that Velasquez, who has no past offenses and no family ties with a criminal, isn't a flight risk after taking his popularity in the MMA scene into account.
Look, that's Cain beating up Brock Lesnar, dude.
Lesnar's a big trouble!
including the countless fans who attended the hearing and wrote letters to the court. Velasquez received an outpatient therapy program, GPS tracking, and home detention as punishment. Besides that, he was told to avoid Goularty and his family. Ultimately, Velasquez got 1 count of willfully firing a gun from a moving vehicle, 1 count for shooting at a moving vehicle or aircraft, 3 counts for assault with a firearm, another 3 counts for assault with a deadly weapon, 1 count for premeditated murder, and the last count for carrying a loaded gun with the intent to commit a crime. Velasquez's lead attorney, Mark Garagos, made 3 attempts to ask for bail and file a writ petition. There was also an attempt.
Fuck, those are a lot of fucking charges, man.
To justify Velasquez's behavior by citing chronic traumatic encephalopathy and traumatic brain damage. Velasquez was unable to return home and begin the healing process, so they were beyond happy.
So by him defending his child from a sex offender, now he's gonna be a felon and have all kinds of fucking shit on his record.
When they eventually posted bail at $1 million.
Back in the day, they just would have went and hung that pedophile, and that would have been the end of it.
Moving on, what's next for Velasquez? For starters, the former UFC heavyweight champion will need to officially post $1 million in bail and wear an ankle monitor to make sure he stays inside his primary residence unless the judge makes an exception. Velasquez must also get outpatient therapy for traumatic brain injury, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, thanks to his lawyer, and counseling for parents of children who have experienced sexual assault, as per Judge Arthur Bocanegra. The 40-year-old's house will be checked to make sure he doesn't have any weapons, and he's been ordered to keep at least 300 yards away from the people who were the targets of his alleged crimes. 8 months have passed since Velasquez was detained on suspicion of firing at Harry Goularty's car, the guy who's believed to have molested the UFC legend's 4-year-old kid. Paul Bender, Goularty's stepfather.
4-year-old kid. What a fucking piece of shit clown.
Was shot, and he claimed to have lost the use of 3 of his fingers. He claims that
Good.
because of the shooting, he's not able to work anymore.
Art's stepdad was
Good.
ultimately shot in the arm and treated for a non-life-threatening injury.
Following up, how did other fighters respond? Many well-known UFC figures have responded as Velasquez prepares for his trial at home. He still faces 10 charges in his case, including premeditated attempted murder, which, if found guilty, could result in a life sentence in jail. Ouch. 2 of the most famous fighters to respond to the news on social media were former UFC champions Michael Bisping and Daniel Cormier. But that's not all. Aljamain Sterling, the UFC bantamweight champion, MMA star Chris Cyborg, Khabib Nurmagomedov's trainer Javier Mendez, and other athletes also shared their thoughts on Vasquez's release. But let's focus a little bit more on Cormier for now. Now for Daniel Cormier's reaction. UFC analyst and former 2-division champion Daniel Cormier was overjoyed when his longtime friend Cain Velasquez wasn't behind bars anymore. 8 months after being detained for the attempted murder of Harry Goularty, who was suspected of abusing Velasquez's 4-year-old child, Velasquez was finally released on bail. Cormier talked about all of this on the MMA Hour podcast. Cormier isn't the only one supporting him. When the bail decision was made, there was a huge outpouring of support for Velasquez, who later told Cara.
Yeah, as there should have been. Support for Cain. Cain's never done anything in his whole life until now.
And 4 that he felt blessed to be free. He promised his fans that he would create something good out of this awful situation. The former heavyweight champion of the UFC is currently at home with his family, but his legal troubles won't go away anytime soon. After illegally participating in a high-speed car chase with Harry Goularty, Patricia Goularty, and Paul Bender, Velasquez is still facing several counts, including attempted premeditated murder. Bender was injured by the bullets fired from a .40 caliber revolver, but his injuries aren't life-threatening. Next up, could Velasquez recover from this? Prosecutor Aaron French strongly argued that Velasquez still poses a strong and persuasive threat of danger to the community in light of the allegations, and prior judge Shalina Brown supported this claim in a previous bail application. Thankfully, the accusation that Velasquez poses a threat to the claimed victims in his case and to the general public wasn't enough to satisfy the new judge Arthur Bocanegra, but the judge expressly said, "I hope you don't prove me wrong," to Velasquez. The judge, in Cormier's opinion, should have absolutely nothing to worry about when it comes to him, and that's exactly what he told him. To make things a tad bit more wholesome, Cormier complimented Velasquez as an amazing parent, hoping he was as great a father as everybody says. But he also hoped that he wouldn't do anything that would put his family at risk. Cormier is confident that Velasquez won't do anything that could potentially jeopardize his case, and he has no doubt about that. The next hearing in Velasquez's case is scheduled for 21st of November in court. Finally, even Dana White was happy. The UFC president shared the joy of the majority of the MMA world after learning that Velasquez was able to reconnect with his loved ones. Likewise, because all that man was really doing doing was looking after his family and playing the role of the protector. Overall,
Yeah, he's done what any parent should do. Protect their fucking kid. A 4-year-old.
Dana was happy that his family had finally been reunited with him. No matter how big a heavyweight he is, Cain Velasquez is a nice man in Dana's eyes, and he thinks that after putting Velasquez through such a tough time, he probably reviewed the case and decided, you know what, this family has had enough suffering, and everybody's happy because of it. To be honest, the kids went through a lot of pain. It's not easy to go about your daily life for a year without your father. Well, let's just hope that Velasquez is allowed to stay with his family, and that real justice is served in this case, so the child molester doesn't molest any other child ever again. What would you do if you were in a similar situation?
Yeah. I don't want to speak about that on camera. But that's it. True Crime King out.